Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this first event for intentional hiking with adventure scientists on collecting scientific data while you hike. My name is Renee Patrick, trail name Shira, and I am an addicted long distance backpacker. I know many of you have your own origin stories as a hiker, and mine began over 20 years ago with a through hike of the Appalachian Trail in 2002. And since then, I've gone on to hike almost 12,000 miles on 12 different trails all over the world. So when I say I'm addicted, I really mean it. I wanted to create this event series to help myself and others in the hiking community develop a culture of thoughtfulness and intention about the time we spend outside on trails. I'm thrilled to see so many familiar faces in the chat and quite a few names I don't know yet. So welcome, everyone. And if you haven't done so yet, please share your name and where you're calling in from tonight. So a few housekeeping items for you. Please use the chat throughout the event. Share your stoke, reactions, comments. If you find the busy chat window distracting, you can always close it down to minimize the action. And please keep your video on or plan to turn your video on during the conversation portion of the event. This series is as much about building community as it is learning more about the specific topic. I think seeing each other will help in fostering those connections during these events. I also want to thank a new member of my team, Jess Boschman, who will be providing back-end support during these events. I've known Jess for a few years, and she has her own thoughtful hiking practice, which includes painting beautiful watercolors in nature. And she's in the midst of writing an Oregon wildflower appreciation book. So for all of you that are interested in the topic, make sure to look for the event on December 20th with botanist Matt Berger. So to start, I want to share tonight's event flow with you. First, I'll give you an overview of intentional hiking events. Then we will hear from our guests and nonprofit partner of the event, Adventure Scientist. After that, we'll have some giveaways from sponsor Trails Magazine, then transition into the conversation portion of the event. And after about 20 minutes of conversations, we'll come back together for a wrap up. So the whole event will take an hour to an hour and a half. So first, I want to explain a bit more about these intentional hiking events with you. I know some of you attended the launch event last month, so this will be familiar information for you, but we have a lot of new folks here tonight, so I want to provide a bit more context. I've already shared that I've been hiking long distance trails for over 20 years now, and what really captivated me about the hiking experience included falling in love with the trail community, discovering the empowering feeling of moving my body through space and time for months at a time, and developing my evolving connection with nature. I made the transition to developing trails back in 2015 after my Continental Divide Trail through hike, primarily for conservation organizations intent on engaging the recreation community in environmental issues. Beyond the work to inspire other hikers to learn about the landscapes that made these trails possible and join in the effort to help protect and restore them, the conservation vision was working on me too. I found myself fully engaged and inspired by the work. In fact, I wanted to do more, so this spring I started a long distance trail consulting business focused on guiding trail organizations, hikers, and the outdoor industry to improve the hiking experience and inspire action on behalf of the environment. As part of the business launch, I developed a hiker survey to gauge the community's interest and desires in a trail experience and their willingness to engage on environmental issues that are affecting the trails they hike. And I was blown away by the responses. Hundreds of hikers have filled out the survey, and it became clear to me that most of them, 98% in fact, are concerned about environmental issues affecting our trails, and 99% would take action if they were asked. So it became clear to me that I could talk directly to the hiking community about these topics and much more. And so the idea for intentional hiking was born. I believe that together we are a powerful force for change. Beyond developing an intentional hiking practice in our own personal trail experiences, I think the impacts and influence of our individual actions can help influence the world around us. If all of us cultivate our relationship with trails and the environment by using our own individual passions, skills, and interests, maybe connections will be made at these events and beyond that will lead to new businesses, new organizations, and new partnerships or collaborations. So in effect, I started this event series to convene the hiking community and empower action. We can make a difference. I really believe we can change the world. So now we're going to talk more about how we as hikers can help collect data that will inform science and research. Each intentional hiking event will be focused on one of the following themes: do, learn, create, be, and a regional focus. So tonight, this is a do event, focused on actions you can take while you are hiking. There are lots of ways to collect data and work with different organizations while you hike. And many of you probably know of projects, apps, or groups that work in this realm. One of the leading organizations involved in this work is Adventure Scientists. I first became aware of Adventure Scientists back in 2013 when my good friend Sage Clegg became the first person to hike the Oregon Desert Trail. Sage not only was able to hike and bike the new route in its entirety, but she collected water samples for scientist Lauren Balls through Adventure Scientists, and her collections led to 2 new diatom species being discovered, which I think is pretty amazing. So Adventure Scientists works to send tens of thousands of volunteers and community members on missions to collect data from remote, difficult to access locations for their conservation partners. As a result, fungus from Everest has helped double crop yields in India. Scat samples are aiding the battle against antibiotic-resistant superbugs. Tree samples help confirm the origins of wood products and prevent illegal logging, and much, much more. So tonight, I want to introduce you to several folks that are here to tell you more about their work. Cassie Heron is the Associate Director of Communication at Adventure Scientists. She has the privilege of telling stories that inspire people to join the community of adventure scientists, whether that's as a volunteer, a scientific partner, or a general supporter of the cause. Next, we have Rich Crone, who is a research geneticist for the U.S. Forest Service based at the Pacific Northwest Research Station in Corvallis, Oregon. Rich's current research involves advancing genetic marker technologies for domestic and international trees to improve timber legality and help prosecute timber theft. Venture scientists and Rich have worked on the timber tracking project together since 2018, and volunteers have sampled 7 different tree species during that time, with a tulip poplar as this year's focal species. We also have in the audience Allison Ormsby. Allison is a forest specialist with Adventure Scientists. She has a PhD in environmental studies and has a variety of work experience over the years as an environmental parks Peace Corps volunteer in Sierra Leone, a Fulbright scholar in India, and a journalist with the United Nations reporting on environmental treaties. We also have Carrie McCracken, who's a volunteer who will share a few words about her experiences volunteering for Adventure Scientists. So I am now going to pass it over to Cassie to tell us more about all the good work you're doing.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Renee, and thank you all for being here. This is quite a pleasure. Renee gave a really great overview, so I can just kind of scoot right through these introductory slides that I put together, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background on how Adventure Scientists came to be and what we focus on and kind of where we're looking moving forward. And then I'm going to hand it over to Rich, who's going to dive into the really interesting stuff, which is about our current timber tracking project, which is focusing on tulip poplar, and where we're actually still actively recruiting volunteers to help with this effort and maybe inspire some of you to want to join as a volunteer moving forward. So I will share my screen so that you guys can look at these slides. Just let me know, Renee, if this works.
Looks good.
All right, fantastic. Well, cool. All right. So just to get started here, as Renee said, I'm the Associate Director of Communications at Adventure Scientists, and I actually just started in June. So I too have been learning and catching up on our organization and our history and where and how we work. And right now is actually a really exciting time at Adventure Scientists. While we've been around for a little over a decade, we're making strides to expand projects and impact on the global scale. So we're in a time of growth. And for tonight, we wanted to focus primarily on an active project we've been doing for almost 5 years now, and that's timber tracking. And I might have been a little incorrect on how many species we've collected with Rich as our partner, but I know that we've usually have at least one focal species every year since we've done the project. So I'm sure Rich can be more specific about what those have been. And this year is tulip poplar. So we've had species all over the country. And so chances are you've been in an area where we've had volunteers, or you might be in an area where we will hopefully deploy volunteers in the coming season. So I will just jump right in here. So hopefully that advanced. Our organization actually started as Adventures and Scientists for Conservation when our founder and director, Greg Trainish, started the organization in 2010. And at that time, Greg was actually on his own adventure hiking the length of the Andes Mountains in Chile. And after being named one of Nat Geo's Explorers of the Year, he had this epiphany. And as a wildlife biologist himself, he knew the challenges that many scientific researchers face in accessing and collecting data. So to him, it seemed like a perfect match to pair people out recreating across the world with scientists who need more information gathered. So we took off and we rebranded after a few years to Adventure Scientists. And since that time, we've partnered on nearly 24 projects across our 4 impact areas, and those are climate, forests, freshwater, and biodiversity. So I know project selection itself was of interest. And there are a few key factors we use to pick projects. And Allison, my colleague on the project creation team, who's our forestry specialist, she can definitely dive into these in more detail later if they come up in discussion. But essentially, a project must require a few key components, and that is that they must require data in an area where data has historically been limited. There needs to be a direct line from the data that we're collecting to some kind of conservation action. And then finally, there must be a need for our unique volunteer network, or folks that can get to these often hard to reach places. This slide just gives you a sense of the variety of folks and entities with whom we work. They can range from government agencies, nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, among many others. And as such, we've been able to deploy volunteers virtually on every continent of the world, every ocean, and to some of the world's highest peaks and depths below the ocean surface. Just going to breeze through a couple of slides on our current project. So reforestation actually has concluded for this season. We wrapped up in September, but in this project, I think, which would be of interest to a lot of you potentially, we were surveying conifer seeds for our partners at Mass Reforestation who grow saplings and replant in areas decimated by wildfire. So this was a really cool first year of this project that we're pretty sure we're going to be continuing into next year as well. So definitely stay on the lookout for that if you live out west. We are still collecting data on coral bleaching locations right now. We're getting data coming back already from Honduras, the Philippines, and the Gulf of Mexico, and as well as collecting tulip poplar, which Rich will discuss. We also still have volunteers out collecting plastic trash from national parks across the country in our Plastic-Free Parks initiative. And this winter and spring, we're going to be kicking off a couple of different projects, Mercury in the Amazon. Some of these are in design phases as well, so maybe not necessarily deploying volunteers, but designing and doing feasibility around other projects. And so Mercury in the Amazon, and then identifying orphaned oil and gas wells across Pennsylvania is another project. And then finally, I just wanted to share a few metrics from our volunteer survey data, which we do collect from folks who participate in our project so that we can continue to monitor and evaluate our programs and ensure a high quality experience for you all. And so, don't take it from me, but from the last 2 years of survey data, when we've asked volunteers how they would rate their overall volunteer experience, the average response was a 4 out of 5. With 75% giving us a 5 out of 5 rating. So I do need to report that to Yelp so that we're official, but that's what folks are saying about the experience. And a couple other cool metrics, 82% of our volunteers agreed or strongly agreed that they protected a place that was important to them. And 97% of volunteers agreed or strongly agreed that they had contributed to a conservation database. So again, you'll get to hear straight from Carrie a little later, but I hope that this gives you an idea of who we are and the kind of experiences that you would gain from joining us. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand this over to Rich, who will do a deeper dive into our timber tracking project.
Thanks, Cassie. That was great. Well, before I start, I want to extend a thanks to Renee and everybody else for the invitation to come and talk about the project. This has really been just a thrilling thing to be a part of for the past few years. And it's a great example of kind of public volunteer partnerships, the kind of which that I think are really important in the Forest Service. And so I'm just going to open this up. Can everybody see this? It's just a title slide to talk about what we're trying to do. And we kind of refer to this as a group as the Timber Project, but I can summarize it pretty easily. And we're just trying to make timber traceable. And there are a number of people that are helping me with this. And this is my reminder to say that I'm not doing this alone. In the Forest Service, I've done this with the help of Laura Hauk and Kristen Finch, who have been my collaborators, and adventure scientists who have been essential. And I thought I'd get everybody in just a clear understanding of what it is that we're talking about. We are talking about timber theft. And so the wood that you see in the background is figured big leaf maple. And this is actually a block of wood that was illegally harvested from the Olympic Peninsula. Shows you the kind of wood that we're talking about. It's beautiful wood. I thought I'd start by giving just a definition so everybody knows what I'm talking about when I mention illegal logging. And I'm just simply referring to harvesting, transporting, processing, or selling timber in a way that it's in violation of either a national or a state or a provincial law. It's hard to underestimate the scope and the scale of illegal logging. There are estimates that somewhere around 15 to 30% of the global timber that's being traded is illegal. You can think about that if you go into Home Depot or if you go into a furniture store. It touches everything we look at. In some countries, illegal logging can represent as much as half to nearly 90% of the timber that's sold. And particularly in cases in South America, like in Peru or in Indonesia, um, these numbers are especially high. People have tried to put a number on it. It's really hard to estimate, but the best guess is that the value of stolen timber is somewhere between 50 billion and 150 billion dollars a year. And these are estimates that come from Interpol, who end up investigating a lot of these. So here in the US, we tend to think that we have a largely legal system for timber. And it's estimated about 1% of the total timber that's traded hands in the US comes from illegal sources. But that 1% really translates to a large number of timber thefts. We estimate that there are about 1,000 significant cases a year. It involves 30,000 cubic meters of wood from the national forest. That means roughly 1 out of every 10 trees that comes off the national forest is illegally gained. And there have been estimates that have been made somewhere between $100 million to $500 million is the annual loss to both public and private landowners. And you can see this in a number of ways. It could be from things like timber poaching, stealing high value logs, it can be stealing fuel wood, firewood, and it can also be from something that they call timber trespass, where people cut outside the boundaries of a legal boundary and take trees that aren't actually part of a cell. So as I mentioned, we're trying to make DNA traceable, or we're trying to make trees traceable. And we're doing this using DNA databases. And DNA from wood can tell us a lot. It can tell us about the individual tree. We're using it to predict the geographic source. And of course, it can tell us about the species. Now, the requirements for us to be able to do this is that we need to have a genetic test. This is something that we can largely do in the laboratory. It's easy to do. But we also have to have a range-wide database, and that's really essential for this work. And that can be really difficult. So consider just a species like big leaf maple, which is common on the West Coast. It has a range that extends from central British Columbia to the Mexican border, over 2,000 kilometers. And so these types of large geographic scale ranges challenge our ability as an agency in the Forest Service to be able to make these kinds of collections. And this is where Adventure Scientist comes in. In 2018, we talked with Adventure Scientists about developing a range-wide collection of big leaf maple, and you can see the geographic range on the left. The way that we did this is we simply broke the range down into a small number of parcels, which you can see in red, and then Adventure Scientists tried to attract volunteers to go in and collect each one of those blocks. So this giant 2,000 kilometer range was broken into about 120 geographic blocks. And after recruitment, they were able to get about 1,100 trees. So they were successful. They did this in 4 months. And so just for perspective, this would be really hard for us to do in the Forest Service, probably at any time frame, but certainly over the course of a summer. So what Adventure Scientists did with us once we came up with the initial design is they helped us execute the sampling by recruiting volunteers, training them how to identify the trees that we work with, providing them with sampling equipment, whether they were collecting leaves, which you can see, or sometimes wood cores. And then once they were trained, the volunteers were the ones that basically determined what their adventure would be. So we have examples of people that have put together trips that involve mountain biking. You see a person holding a red cedar canoe. That person kayaked the length of the Columbia River from British Columbia to the mouth of the Pacific Ocean, collecting trees along the way. We have people that have taken day trips. We have people that have taken overnight trips, people that have snowshoed and skied. And so I think that this has been a lot of the success of this effort for the past 5 years, is that people can build their own adventure and build these types of collections in for the types of things that they want to do in the backcountry and in the wildernesses already. As Cassie mentioned, we've done 7 species to date, roughly a little over 1 per year. Our first collection was in 2018 with big leaf maple, which you can see on the top left. In 2019, we initiated studies with 3 different cypress relatives, so western red cedar, coast redwood, and yellow cedar. And this basically covered the entire West Coast, really from Alaska to Mexico. In 2021, we did our first study that was east of the Mississippi River, focusing on black walnut. And in 2022 and 2023, these were expanded into white oak last year, and then tulip tree or tulip poplar this year. And I just put a summary on there that at present, these collections have involved over 700 volunteers, and they've collected in total over 7,000 specimens for these databases. It's just really a remarkable collection. When I share this information that we're collecting, it's not just the samples, it's also specimen information about the trees, about their health. Scientists that I interact with just think that these are stunning databases. They're really high quality. And so they're just a remarkable achievement. I should make a note here that most of the focus so far has been on timber theft. Big leaf maple is a target of timber theft, black walnut, yellow cedar, western red cedar, tulip tree. These are all focuses of timber theft. Some of these collections, though, are really important for things like managing into the future with predicting the impacts of climate change. And so for yellow cedar, tulip tree, eastern white oak, black walnut, the data that we have is also going to be useful for forest managers who are trying to figure out how to devise plans for healthy forests going into the future decades. I just wanted to highlight what these 7,000 samples look like. This comes from the Adventure Scientists database, which they have this all up. You can see where people have collected. Again, 7,000 samples, 7 species. And the important thing to point out here is that in this map, they drew the geographic range of the species and show where the sample locations fall within that range. And for each of the 7 species that we've looked at, they have sampled the range. That's really important for the work that we do to be able to have kind of the central zone where the species are most abundant, but even those trailing and lagging edges where trees may harbor diversity that could be lost in the future due to climate change. There are 2 things that jump out about me at this map. Those of you that are through hikers, you can obviously pick out points here that you can participate in Adventure Scientist collection, basically starting in at one end of the Appalachian Trail and working all the way through, or the Pacific Crest Trail. The other thing that jumps to my attention is we really needed to start a project in the Rocky Mountains because we have a big hole and it's obvious. So we'll have to work on that. I just wanted to give just a quick overview of how we build these DNA databases. And the example that I have here is actually for case samples that we work with, but it would be the same with Adventure Scientist samples. People go out and collect material from the woods. In this case, it could be a stump, but it could also be leaves, it could be seeds, it could be fruit. They put it into a sample tracking database. With law enforcement, of course, it's going to go into their information management system. With Adventure Scientists, they've built this around a couple of different apps that people can use in the field that are either built around something like Gaia or Survey 123. When we get the samples here in Corvallis, Oregon, we process the samples, and that basically means turning everything into either sawdust or plant dust. Once we have that material processed, we can extract the DNA, and then we check the DNA sequences and obtain what's called a DNA profile. It's simply a collection of DNA markers that we're looking for in the genome and that tell us about either the individual identity, the geography where it came from, or what species it is. I just made a note here. We often use a method that's based on mass spectroscopy. I'm always amazed because what this method does is it weighs the mass of different DNA molecules. I always have a hard time wrapping around my brain around weighing a DNA molecule, but it can weigh the subtle differences and actually use that to tell us a DNA sequence. Once we have a database, which is shown right here, we can do the analysis. We can use this to actually look at forensic materials that law enforcement brings in, and we can give them some guidance and tell them whether or not their hypothesis about a stump and a log actually works. So to date, we've used these timber databases in 2 different federal trials. The one that caught the most attention was back in 2018, and this was a big leaf maple trial. This was called the Maple Fire case because the people that were illegally cutting logs accidentally set a fire. It was a 3,000-acre fire. We used a database to help with the analysis to prove the person stole the logs. And it was just as we were building our first Adventure Scientist database. In fact, the person that was supposed to collect trees from this region where the fire was set was not able to get to it because the Forest Service had blocked the road off the day before. So, and we actually have cases where people were going out to a particular site and were heading to a place where active logging was taking place. The second time that we've used this in trial has just been recently with the Mark Twain Forest in Missouri, and this was a black walnut theft case. You can see here what happens is people cut the trees and then cut it up here as well, and they take out a large section, often that's 8 to 10 to 12 feet long, because that's the most valuable part of the tree. This is just now being wrapped up in the courts, and so I can talk a little bit about it. The sentencing has not gone through, so I can't share all the details. But what I can tell you is that adventure scientists, volunteers, collected the trees from around this area in southern Missouri, and we used their samples in the database that was turned in this particular investigation. So we have a case where volunteers have literally helped provide the information that was used to prosecute a timber theft case. The last thing I want to mention that we're really starting to take on is geographic source prediction, and this is neat. When we have these dense data sets, and this example is shown from big leaf maple, there's a lot of information in there in this data set about where a tree comes from. And we've been able to take particular logs and ask the question, if we didn't know where this tree came from and we tried to predict it, how far would we be from the true origin? You can see two examples. We took logs from one theft case back in 2018. This was the Maple Fire, and a second theft case, this Cowlitz Valley timber theft case. And what you can see is that we can predict the geographic origin of where these trees came from within 11 kilometers. And this is common throughout the range of this species. We can predict where the trees came from. So at 11 kilometers, we're not going to be able to tell a law enforcement officer where to go search to find a stump. But it does answer questions about things like which state did it come from? Which forest did it come from? Did it come from a national park? And that tells us a lot about the legality of the trees that are being taken. That is it illegal or is it legal? And so this is a real powerful tool. It's the kind of thing that we can only do with a range-wide collection, and it's really the kind of thing that adventure scientists is helping us enable. And so I just want to end this and just say that there's more information on these timber projects available, and I just wanted to put the slide up here so that it was captured in the video. You can search through the timber projects that Adventure Scientist has listed and learn more about them. If you want to see how this information is actually used and how it was used in the Maple trial, I added one website that you can get to a Forest Service publication that also describes this. And so with that, I'll open it up and we can get some feedback from someone that has spent time collecting samples in the field.
I don't know if I should introduce Carrie, but Carrie, I know we have not had the pleasure of meeting in person, but I know that you have been a volunteer with Adventure Scientists now for a while, and this isn't your first project that you've participated in. So thank you so much for being a volunteer and for being here tonight. And I think we'd love it if you could just introduce yourself and what projects you've been a part of. And with regards to the current timber tracking project, maybe just give us a little, taste of what that's like and what you've gotten from being a volunteer.
This is my second year participating in Timber Trackers. So my two projects were that I participated in the Eastern White Oak last year, and I'm involved with the Tulip Poplar. And I have helped actually also with the Ash project this year. So basically I saw a headline about what they were doing with enforcing the logging laws with using their database using DNA, and I'm actually a geneticist also, so I had to read that. And when I read that Adventure Scientists were as volunteers doing the collecting, I was like, great, I can be part of this. And so I did the training, got involved, and I roped in my husband and my son, but he's a minor, so he's not officially a volunteer, but he's been to a lot of collection sites now. So for us, it's been a really great opportunity to just, well, he also was a mountain biker. So sometimes when he was mountain biking, we would go off into another direction of the park he was biking in. So our lifestyle has directed sometimes where we've collected, but then other times we've been like, well, there really hasn't been anything collected in that area. We need to go there. So sometimes the project has directed our hiking. So we're like, okay, we're going to collect, but well, now we're here. So we would go and we would collect. And it's been really a great opportunity for us to really share with my son what science looks like when you're outside, that there is everything going on out there as well. And so we had the experience that, I love spending time in the forest and I always have, but I feel like it's really guided me to pay more attention to the trees in a different way because I'm looking for tulip poplars. So it's not just that I find them or they're missing, but now I'm like, well, that's not a tulip poplar. What is that? So it's been a new relationship with the forest. It's been really exciting to really get to explore that way. I just, sometimes you just need something to kind of push you to really make that extra step to learn these kinds of things. And so we've been wrapping that up. And I talked to my son about, he's 15, so we're still exploring his interests. And hey, natural resources science is a career. So it's been fun to share that and that idea to pass it on to him as well. So after participating last year, I was watching Adventure Scientist this spring, like, is there an East Coast tree this year? Because I'm in Maryland. So my collection has been mostly in Maryland and neighboring states, pretty much, mostly neighboring states. So my family, we're really day hikers, to be honest, but it really kind of got us to like, okay, we're going out this weekend, we're going out next weekend and the next weekend. So it really helped really give us the extra reason that we're going hiking another weekend. So it was kind of, you don't let life give you excuses not to go hiking when you've committed to. I told the organization I was collecting in that state park on those dates, I'm going. So it's been really a good experience for us and to share it together. And I've tried to encourage other people. Everybody wants to come with us, but nobody really wants to sign up and do their own training. So I'm always sharing it. I shared it at work. So yeah.
Barry, I would love to hear a little bit more from your perspective. What is the training like? Like, so you decided to do a project. What is that like before you're actually going out to collect samples? What's your time commitment and what's that process like for you?
The training, I don't think it took that long, maybe a couple of hours. A lot of that is that there is an app available for you to collect the data into the app. So there is getting familiar with that app. There is, so then for me, for the planning, there's basically like taking advantage of things like getting familiar with iNaturalist. I'm not sure if other people here use that already, because I want to go to a park. If I have a choice between two parks, I want to go to the one where there's a documented tulip poplar already. So that's kind of the time commitment to the planning has taken a little bit of time because you also have to coordinate with Adventure Scientists about permits. I think that's really an important part of it. If they're going to be using these in a database, we have to make sure they're well documented. So that nobody's going to be upset that we collected somewhere. So that whole, you don't normally go around collecting leaves in the forest. So yeah. So I think the training wasn't that long, and just I would get online and spend like 10 minutes kind of looking into different opportunities, and then I would tell my family, okay, this is what we're doing. So
great. Thank you so much. I have a question from a hiker or a scientist, maybe first one of the Adventure Scientist folks. What is the process to get a project added? Say we know there's this particular issue. What would you do, or how would you go about suggesting you add a project?
Allison, do you mind taking that?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Thank you.
I'll take that. Yeah. And I'll just back up for a second and say, if you're interested in volunteering, sign up through our website, and then that will take you to the training. And it's an online asynchronous training mainly. Yeah, and it takes like 1 or 2 hours. It's not that onerous. So if you have a great idea, we always do our projects with partner organizations like the Forest Service. It could be a nonprofit organization like Intentional Hiking, or it could be a government agency. It could even be a business. It has to be a conservation project. Like Cassie said, it has to have a question that's answering a conservation challenge. So it's not just collecting data for data's sake. It has to have a goal, an applied goal. And it also has to be data at scale. So it's probably not like a little tiny area. It has to be a larger area. The question you're addressing is a larger area. So then you would just contact our project creation team. And we actually have just an email for project creation, just project creation at Adventure Scientists. Yeah, and then we would brainstorm about it. Sometimes people come with funding already, but sometimes we have to go find funding. But we always have projects in the pipeline that we're thinking about, and we're just trying to figure out, like, does it actually make sense? So yeah, we're open to ideas. And we, like Cassie said, we've been traditionally in the US. We've had some global projects, but we're looking to internationalize even more.
Thank you, Allison. And any sneak peek at projects coming next year that you can share with us, with everyone here that might want to get started?
I mean, I would love to tell the timber trees for next year. However, they're not 100% decided. So I like what Carrie was saying about East Coast, West Coast. It would be so nice. And I'm from Virginia originally, so shout out. I would love us to have a West Coast tree. We have one in mind, and also an East Coast. I have one in mind. But it does take a lot of time to do, like Rich was talking about, the protocols, like the methodology. It actually takes a while to make sure that the methodology is sound. So there will be trees in 2024. And then I just want to give a little heads up. We have a project called Plastic Free Parks, which is with the national parks, collecting and documenting plastic debris in parks. So that's ongoing. So if you are curious, or even if you're traveling and you're like, wow, I might want to help out while I'm traveling and do something that makes a difference, check out our website and look at our ongoing projects, like the one that Cassie already mentioned, coral reefs. If you're a scuba diver and you want to help out with we have 2 different coral reef projects going right now. There's just a lot on the burner right now, and other things that are in the pipeline. And another shout out for our newsletter. If you sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media, then you'll get the up to the date info.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all of you. And I encourage you to, everyone in the chat, if you happen to get into a breakout, or I'm sorry, the breakout portion, if you get into a room with Cassie, Rich, Allison, or Carrie, you can pick their brains even more. So yeah, I hope a lot of you are interested and will sign up to get more information. I know I will be, or have been, and just looking for that right project where I want to be hiking. So great. So now we're going to move on to some giveaways. So I'm going to share a little bit about our giveaway sponsor tonight. This is Trails Magazine. So those of you out there may not have heard of Trails Magazine. They are in their first year of business. So they're an independent print magazine for backpackers and people who like to sleep in the dirt. So their recently released issue number 4 marks their first full year in business. So I'm a big lover of print media, magazines, just the tangible. And I actually like to take books and magazines hiking. But I became a subscriber this year and thought these would be fun to give away. So tonight we'll be giving away 2 copies of the most recent magazine. So first I want to share a few words from the editor, Ryan Witchelins, about how he approaches his work with intention. So he said, we started Trails Magazine to do something really specific, to create a magazine serving the backpacking community in a way other magazines failed to do. Everything we do, from assigning stories to working with photographers and illustrators, is done with intention in service of that goal. There's nothing more important to us than making something our readers and the backpacking community can really enjoy, and it's something that's always at the forefront of our minds as we create each issue. So we are going to go to, oh, I just lost my screen. 1 second. Okay. The first giveaway opportunity, let's keep the question focused on print. So this is going to be a subjective question, so no right or wrong answers. Type into the chat your favorite hiking related book and why. So I'll give you a minute or two to think and type, and then I'll pick one person to win. And I hope we'll all learn about a new book or two to add to our reading lists. So excited to hear what books y'all would love and why do you love them? Anyone out there? Oh, okay. Antipod, Trekking in Madagascar. Ooh, The Cactus Eaters. 2 new ones to me. Let's see, which one am I going to share? Oh, Old Lady on the Trail by Mary Davison. That's a good one. And The High Sierra. I was just talking about that one with someone, Lanny. The Overstory. Yes. Oh, On Trails. That's a good one. Yeah. What else do we have? Oh, yes. Brian Doyle. He's a fabulous writer. Martin. Okay, I'll give it another few seconds. The Old Ways. Lord of the Rings. That's always a good adventure journey book. Walden, yes. Well, I'm going to pick the book that I was literally just talking about with someone today, The High Sierra, A Love Story by Kim Stanley Robinson. So I will send you a copy of the issue number 4 of Trails Magazine. So thank you for sharing. Oh, we got a couple more in. Sound of the Mountain Water. And yes, I will include all these book suggestions in the notes for the recap, and I'll send you all an email so we can all have a list of these books. And keep them coming. If you didn't get a chance to write your book, keep them coming. Okay, so the next copy is going to go to the first person to type in the right answer into the chat. What is the longest trail system in the world? And bonus points if you know the mileage. So the name of the longest trail system, and you just get a pat on the back if you get the mileage right. So let's see if any of these are coming in. We have, okay, that was an easy one. The Trans-Canada Trail. So that was Rose Olson, congratulations. And the mileage is 14,912 miles, which is just really crazy to think about doing that. Oh, probably not all in 1 year or 1 season. Definitely not 1 season, but I'm sure it will be added onto someone's list tonight. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to get into the conversation portion of tonight.